Good morning, everybody. And this is Ed Avis. I'm the Managing Director of APDSP, and I'm very happy that everyone has joined us for today's presentation by Woody Rush. Before I introduce Woody, I want to tell you that you are welcome to ask questions during today's presentation. Please use the questions tab on your screen. And if you don't see that tab, there's a little orange button, a little orange arrow near the top right of your screen. Click on that and that'll reveal all your tabs. You can send in those questions at any point during Woody's presentation, and then we will answer them at the end of his presentation. Okay, Woody is a veteran reprographics person. He's been involved for many years. Most of you probably know him best from his time at Plan Express, but he also has a background that reaches back further into other areas, including healthcare administration and engineering management. So he brings a lot of deep, broad experience to his consultancy now, and I think you'll enjoy what he's going to share with us today. Okay, I'm going to switch the presenter now to Woody, and he can take it from here. Woody, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right, the screen is yours, Woody.
Okay. Thanks for introducing me, Ed. I'm happy today to be able to share my thoughts with the group and hope that in doing so, some of the things that I might discuss would generate interest in some of our folks in looking at opportunities that arise in our industry that may relate to the AEC industry, but not necessarily be traditional in the sense that we've always done things those organizations. My view is that for many, many years, we've provided construction information to the AEC industry through what we used to call blue lines in our archive libraries that we maintained in our shops. And when the .com era surfaced, a lot of people popped up saying, we can provide all this stuff online. Printing is going to be dead. Why don't you move over to our platform? And we were so engaged with digital printing, which was also emerging at the time, and making such good money on that digital print service, we really didn't recognize what was happening in terms of the information we provided. And these providers who popped up, a lot of them disappeared when the .com bust occurred, but the result was that a lot of our print services became commoditized, and we were viewed as just a service bureau that provided printing. And we really weren't in the business any longer of managing the information. And to me, that was a sad day for us as an industry, because my opinion is we, and I include myself in that group, should have recognized back in the mid-90s what was happening, and we should have been the ones pushing the development of project management systems, not people who were outside of the AEC industry, or people who were in the industry but not as service providers. So that, with that in mind, let me go ahead and start my presentation and just kind of walk through some of my thoughts. And the first one that I want to mention is that the Association of Printing and Data Solutions Professionals, in my opinion, is thinking outside the box. I have to admit that when we made the name change from IRGA to APDSP, I was one of those people who thought, why are we doing this? But I'd always been one who felt that IRGA really didn't address who we were, and I've come to recognize that even though we are still an association that largely focuses on printing, we now offer opportunities for people who are data solutions professionals. And while I don't consider myself to be a data professional. I do think that I'm one who embraces the need for focusing on different ways to serve our clients. And APDSP is not an organization any longer that's just for companies. It's for individuals, which is why I was allowed to become a member of the organization. And I would encourage people out there who have members in their organizations to consider becoming an individual member of the organization, because it does offer these kinds of opportunities. One of which is just like today's opportunity to have an educational event where I'm going to talk about outside the box kinds of thinking, but also it's a time when we can network with other like-minded print or solutions providers to discuss these kinds of ideas, some of which may resonate with you and some of which may not. But the organization is, in my opinion, becoming one that is more open to addressing the broader range of services that we should be providing. The key is going to be you. And it doesn't matter to me if you're in 15 other affinity groups. This organization provides a valued opportunity for us to network with people who are very much like us. It's not easy to think outside the box in reprographics, and I recognize that. But one of the things that my dad used to do is mind games and challenge my brother and I to figure things out. And you've probably all seen this puzzle before, but it's nine dots inside a box that are arranged in such a way that the challenge is to connect all of the dots with 4 connected straight lines. And if you can think about it all day long, but you're not going to do it if you're limited to connecting those dots inside the box. But if you start thinking outside the box and you draw 4 straight lines that are all connected, not only have you matched the challenge of connecting the dots, but you've gone outside of your comfort zone. You've connected the dots by expanding your thought beyond the limits of the box that you're in. And that's kind of one of the things I'd like for us to think about today. And I had a client who once used the term, he wanted to do things beyond print. And in that view, we expand our vision to keep us connected with the clients and prospects that we know and who know us, all the way from the very beginning of the idea of having a project all the way through final construction and beyond. So I think that's a really good way to define what we're thinking about. It's beyond print. How would you look at your box? What is your focus? Each of us have our own vision for what we want our organizations to do, and that means that we're going to be led in different directions, which is fine. And I'm going to use some examples in today's session that demonstrate how some of the people in our association have begun to think in different directions and where that has led them. But this thinking strategically is not something I want you to think of academically or in terms of being something really complex, but think of it in terms of very simple thoughts like, is the idea that's in my head one that would work for my company? What is my gut telling me I need to do? Who am I talking to about it? Am I talking to the customers that I've worked with for many years to find out what interests they have in terms of the services that I could provide? What competitive forces are already out there? Have you ever Googled project management systems yourself to see what people are looking at, what systems are evolving, and really thinking about it in terms of how you can serve them, and that begins to fit within what resources do I have or could I acquire to be able to accomplish some of these goals. If you don't have the resources, have you got a plan B or C or D? And lastly, what kind of a plan should you come up with to address these opportunities? And when you think about strategical and tactical planning, academically, strategic plans are those that are long-term goals. And there's a whole host of things that are involved with strategic planning that we won't go into today, but I do want to differentiate it from the tactical operational plans that help us get there. So strategic planning is supposed to be long term. If you've got one, I want to go through what basically the elements are. Typically, it's a long-term solution. They used to say that you're looking strategically 3 to 5 years out, but in today's market, I know that some organizations have shrunk that time frame down to a year. And I know an example of that would be FedEx. They have now included 1 year plans as more strategic as opposed to tactical. They need to reflect what you think you're trying to accomplish as an organization, not what my interests are or what your competitors' interests are, but where you can find something that differentiates your company from all the rest. If you look at the business plans, you're going to see there's product planning, operational planning, pricing, marketing, financial, a bunch of others, but don't get bogged down in trying to overcomplicate the idea that you've got as you think a little bit outside the box. Don't think of it as something that's going to fix your organization, because thinking outside the box and coming up with a plan to address that is not going to solve all of your problems. It's not crisis management. It's not something that allows us to get something done. It's finding the right thing that you want to accomplish instead of just managing a product. It's not a series of endless meetings that people may be obliged to attend. They feel that it's something that management is requiring them to do. They come not prepared to address the discussion, and it's really not necessarily for people in your organization who are your power players. And I don't mean to exclude them. It simply means that they may not be your best strategic thinkers. It may be that in your organization there's a sales guy who's always coming up with ideas that seem to come from left field, and he's got the energy to research them. He's always asking about different meetings that are being held and has an interest in attending those meetings. There are people out there who take the initiative to take their job seriously beyond the scope of their work. And those people tend to be ones that you want to seek out as people to participate in this strategic effort to think of outside the box. It doesn't have to be complex, and I've been involved with, in particular in healthcare, where we were involved with a lot of planning that involved all sorts of detailed spreadsheets, creating models, basically coming up with hard data to support a particular idea. And it's not necessary to do a lot of that. It's not going to be something that's authoritative for the future, meaning you're not going to be locked into doing what you first come up with. It's got to be something that you adapt to, and that's called emergent planning. And this comes, I put the citation here because if you don't know Roger Martin, he came up with a really, really good article called The Big Lie of Strategic Planning. And if Ed shares this presentation with people after the meeting, I would encourage you to Google particularly that article. It's pretty lengthy, but it's really a good overview of how you can think outside the box without ruining the opportunities that may present themselves. There's another element here, and that's called an emergent strategy. And the emergent strategy is really different than the strategic plan in that strategic is what you intend to do. And that tends to be a formal planning process, whereas an emergent strategy is what's actually happening as that strategic plan begins to unfold. And often, very, very successful efforts start out as strategic plans which evolve or emerge from decisions that are based on the flexibility the organization needs rather than slavishly trying to follow what's in that original plan. Simply put, strategic planning is about developing best options. Emergent planning responds to the events and adjusts the plan as necessary. And tactical planning is really the operational aspect that continues to react to what conditions are changing, whether they were originally part of the strategic plan or they've emerged as part of the emergent plan, or they've come about as a result of changing environments. And they tend to cycle back through cycle planning. So an overview would be that strategic plans are future, whereas tactical plans are modified based on what actually happened. Strategic plans are general. Tactical plans tend to be revised lots of times. There's very little detail in strategic planning. Tactical planning is very detailed. And strategic plans are initiated, whereas tactical plans are reactionary, with emerging plans working with both the strategic and tactical aspects of it. I think the best example recently of how this plays out is what's happened with Amazon and their HQ2, their headquarters 2. There's no telling how much money Amazon spent doing due diligence to decide which of the cities in this country would make their list of 19 semifinalists to become the Amazon HQ2. And that's just how much money Amazon spent, much less the time that they spent. And we all know from what happened in New York City when that hit, an emergent plan had to come into play because the political uproar was so significant to Amazon, to the city of New York. They went back and they adjusted very quickly what their plan was. So when you think of how much time and effort went into the strategic plan, I'm sure there were people who said, we've got to stick with our plan. That's the plan. But they recognized that's not going to work. So they came up with an emergent plan that would adjust their plan so they're not going to be in New York City. But the tactical plan then became to figure out, okay, how are we going to work around that? Where are we going to reassign staff to other regional offices? And what necessary adjustments are we going to have to make throughout the organization to accommodate that? To me, that's an excellent example of the way strategic plans evolve into practical application of implementation. And the planning effort goes back through the strategic planning process. So maybe planning like this isn't really such a new thing in our industry after all. I'm sure most of you recognize this. It's a survey department. And if you think about it, there aren't printers in survey departments, although printing is done for many survey companies. But lots of our fellow reprographers had survey departments and still do for sales and service. In my view, back in the day when this first emerged, that was thinking outside the box because it wasn't blueprinting. If you think about where this led, I want to use Duncan Parnell as merely an example of one organization who took survey and did something in a little bit different direction. This comes from their website where they offer geospatial solutions. And if you take a deeper dive into what those solutions are, it's still surveying is there. They have mapping and GPS or GIS, and they have the services that are offered. And if you look at the list, some of those things would not have even been on a list even 5 years ago. But they got there because they thought outside the box of printing, and they specialized. They had the resources internally to offer these services, and it's now a division called Geospatial Solutions. Another example comes from Blue Edge, and by the way, I did ask these organizations if I could use their website as examples today, and they're not meant to single them out as exemplary organizations doing this, but merely to show that when you think strategically outside the box, you can come up with some ideas that not only are profitable for you moving forward, but give you an edge on the competition as well. And Blue Edge, If you look at their website, you'll see they're certainly into managed print and document services, but they also are into 3D services. And if you look at their website to see 3D printing and design, laser scanning, virtual reality, selling 3D equipment, those are things that emerged as a result of a strategic thinking process where it morphed over a period of time into what it's become today. One that I really like is Southeast Blueprint in Cleveland, Ohio. And I like it because they retained the word blueprint in their name. But if you look at their website, where do you see the printing? You know, this is from their main homepage, and they are 21st century blueprinting, information management, plan review services, closeout services, long-term digital archiving. Those are all terms that even a few years ago you wouldn't have heard. But the reason I like their website is that they support CSI and PRISM. And if you're not familiar with either of those organizations, the Construction Standards Institute certifies people as document technicians, a CDT, and they also certify people who are contract administrators. And the fact that Southeast Blueprint supports CSI and seeks to become certified by CSI speaks volumes of their commitment to what they're doing for their clients. But then they also are members of PRISM, and PRISM is a global trade association for, does it say reprographers? No. It says for information management companies. What does that say about the organization that is working as a member of PRISM? To me, it speaks volumes about their commitment to looking at information management differently than simply being print on paper. Why? To me, it establishes a level of credibility and relevance with their clients. It becomes a differentiator between them and their competition, and it was a strategic decision that they had to make that they're going to pursue supporting these organizations and these services. RSNAP is another one that's been around for a long time and certainly offers traditional reprographic services of sales of printers, of printing, all of the things that we traditionally do, but on their website, again, they are focusing on construction information management. And if you dive into what those include, they have modules that they offer to their clients that really are customized based on what the interest at the time is. So they're not offering a one-size-fits-all service. If closeout is the thing that's the most interest to them, they're going to focus on offering closeout. If people are really interested in that last one, which is strategic printing, that's just different than mass printing. It's very specific to what you need, when you need it, and where you need to have it delivered. When I made this presentation at the meeting in October, Daphne Best was a part of the panel, and she does something called G-clay printing. And I thought, well, no, that's outside the box, and maybe it didn't start inside the box. But as a matter of fact, it did start inside the box. It grew out of their providing AEC large format color services. And it's gone to the extent now that they can do museum quality prints using this G-clay print service. Another one that I'll use is Elmer Rhodes, who is at Crossroads Reprographics, and obviously he does print services, but you'll also see that he has an offering called CWMS, which is Construction Workforce Management System. And what that is a way to manage your diversity goals on a project in a live environment, rather than looking back to see what was our diversity goal for a project and trying to come up with all sorts of formulas to determine whether or not they met those goals. He does it with using basically the technology you find in toll roads, where RFID readers see with the tag of people coming and going through the job site. they know immediately the parameter, the profile of that individual. So if you want to know what your minority participation is at any point in time, it's immediately available as live information, and that's not something that I think anybody else has offered. In fact, I know that where I lived for many years in Memphis, uh, three different organizations in Memphis, the county government, the city government, and the utility division, all did independent retrospective views of whether or not they met their goals for minority participation. And combined, they spent over $1 million to come up with a plan, I mean, with a report that at its most recent was 3 years old. So it was already outdated before they ever started collecting the information. The information was all looking back 3 to 5 years ago. And what Elmer's come up with is something that can give you an instant report on a daily basis, a weekly basis. And his system provides information through reports that can be made available to the people who need that information. Now, think about just CWMS. Is that printing? No. Is it related to what the AEC people he works with would be interested in? Yes. It's interesting to him because as a minority businessman, he himself, I'm sure, has been through some of the experiences that show the real need to do this right, not do it the way it's being done currently. So I find that to be a very compelling example of thinking outside the box, but also providing services to clients who need that kind of information. The last one I'll use as an example is the Job Site Tech Group. And the reason I use it is if you look at the website, it was started by one of the oldest solutions providers in construction. It didn't stay that way because from the very beginning, there was a goal to make this a separate company, which it has become, but offering on-site technical services to the project team members is something that Job Site Tech Group can do. Again, it's an example of thinking outside the box, but still thinking in terms of serving the AEC industry. In fact, what I've tried to do is show that all of these services are connected or grew out of relationships that people had with people who were in the AEC market. They didn't abandon the AEC market. They didn't go outside the market exclusively. They didn't move away from it. They really found ways they could discover services that would be of interest. And I haven't covered all of them. I know there are others that, quite frankly, there are several who have some really, really cool programs that they're just not willing to share with everybody because right now they're flying under the radar. Nobody really knows what they're up to, and they're doing very well at it without other people knowing what they're doing. So they want to continue to capitalize on the things that have brought them success over the years. But a few examples that I didn't mention are disaster recovery services, site inspections and accreditations that lots of organizations have to go through. Drone services is another one that would be emerging. And then obviously we have all of the other typical AEC examples of people, for example, offering to manage your project management system themselves rather than have you do the management of your project management platform yourself. They basically are outsourcing the expertise to be the admins for other people's project management systems. But all of those are thinking outside of the box. And then I want to go over three others that come really from outside the U.S. that I run into over the years that really show a different kind of thinking. One is inventory management out of a company in Sweden, retail marketing from a company in Tokyo, and then document markups from a company that's in Toronto. And what they have in common is it was a strategic response to the changing markets that each of them faced. They were developed internally by reprographic companies. They didn't go out and buy this, they built it themselves. It required a big commitment on their part of their corporate resources to become involved with these opportunities. And all three of these were very high risk opportunities. They each now have partners who use their system and have been very successful, even though people thought they were crazy for going that far out of reprographics. And the owners persevered through the challenges they faced by continuing to listen to what their clients were telling them and by making the adjustments to the systems that they were developing where it was necessary. And they discovered that their systems made their companies no longer just a reprographic company. One of those is Architectopia in Stockholm, and they were one of the very first who created a project management system. And looking at the history of their system, it goes really all the way back to 1986 when they started distributing documents electronically, but they officially launched their project management system in 1999. But one of the components of that system is really document management. It's typical reprographics, but where that led them was really into the project management portfolio, which took them into inventory management. And if you think about it, inventory management, meaning tools on the job site, equipment on the job site, isn't really all that different from management of documents. And what they did is took their document management module, applied it to tools, put a barcode on each person's hat and a barcode on each tool that was on the job site. And when someone checked out a drill, for example, they matched that drill with that individual, and suddenly the loss of equipment and loss of supplies on the job site was dramatically reduced. And that was done not by implementing an inventory control system, but by simply taking the document management piece they already had, modifying it slightly so that they could match who had the document or who had the tool with an individual, and offering that as part of the module. It's not even a separate module. It's just part of document management is inventory management. That carries them into managing the facility and has created for them an ongoing client relationship that is not enjoyed by a lot of reprographers in this country because they're focused not just on documents, but also all of the equipment that's on site. Another thing that they have done that I found very interesting is become very active in ISO certification. And ISO 9001, which is on quality measures, 14001, which is really LEED stuff on green criteria, and 27001, which is in information security. They are certified in all of those areas, which again gets back to that giving them credibility and relevance to their clients. They do have other partners now throughout Scandinavia and as far away as the Czech Republic who are using their system. Even though it's not popular in this country, it's one of the things that works for them and works very well. The second one is a company called Kaimeisha in Tokyo that didn't even have a website when I first met them, but they had in place workflows that were truly amazing. And I say that because in Japan, the art isn't really in the printing. The art is in the folding of the documents. And each company has a different way to fold. So it couldn't really just have a folder added to the end of the print queue so that they could fold documents. And they had a really interesting way of merging the manual folding, almost origami style of documents with workflows. And those workflows eventually took them into an opportunity to build retail facilities for clients. And in building those retail facilities, they took it one step further to become a provider of information related to the retail organization. So now they really aren't in reprographics anymore. They have moved exclusively to becoming a retail information technology hub where they offer to Japanese clients ordering, automated workflows, volume predictions, barcode tracking, all of the things that you might see in an Amazon interface in this country, he's doing in Japan and throughout the Far East. And that's the result of their thinking outside the box strategically. The last one I want to spend a little more time on because I've spent the last couple of years working with an organization called Inktronic in Toronto. And just to be transparent about it, Andy Chiodo is a former board member of the RGA. He owned entire reprographics. He had 30 plus years in the industry, and he kept seeing decreasing volumes in his monochrome AEC prints. So he became one of those early adopters of, quote, digital technology. He talked to his clients. He sought input from people who were in the IT industry. And he realized that there was still a significant number of folks who really just preferred to use paper. And he envisioned a way that he could bridge that digital divide between digital and legacy workflows. And he came up with Inktronic as his solution. I, on the other hand, came to it in a little bit different way. I was introduced to something called LiveScribe by John Cronin several years ago, and after he introduced me to it, LiveScribe became my way of keeping up with my notes. And it's done using an intelligent paper with an intelligent pen, but I approached LiveScribe from a company called Anoto in Sweden and said, can you do the same thing for large format? Because I had an interest in developing the same thing that Andy wound up developing. At that point in time, they said it couldn't be done because file sizes would be too large. It just would be unmanageable. I backed away from it. Andy, on the other hand, didn't back away. He looked into creating a way to make it work and came up with a really unique solution. But I was looking for ways to incorporate this technology in the AEC data world. And with my experience in healthcare and engineering management, I really felt like this would be something that could be offered to clients across different platforms. And I also felt like from the evolving technologies that were out there, this was not something that would go away quickly. And it's really based on a very simple principle, but a very challenging implementation. There's a digital pen involved that has a small camera, a small processor. It has a Bluetooth capability, and it has a vibrator in it and memory. That combined with a piece of paper that has a unique grid printed on the document itself. It's not manufactured that way, but the grid is printed on the document that says to this digital pen, here's where you are on this page. And not only that, but here's which page you are on. But that matrix grid combined with the digital pen gives the paper itself a degree of intelligence. And that allows for people to use the pen as an instant digital input device. And in researching it, I found that my own opinion is for the foreseeable future, there are always going to be some people who prefer to use paper. And supporting that was a research paper done by Toluna Research in 2017, where they found that 61 to 66% prefer print to digital services when reading books, magazines, and newspapers. And I think that equally applies to large format documents as well, or construction documents. Currently, between 30 and 40% of the people that we've talked to prefer paper over digital. And toward that end, PlanGrid in their ebook in 2018 observed that 32% of employees and 28% of managers in construction are still reluctant to adopt new technology. So it boils down to why not offer paper that's also a digital input device. In a nutshell, that's kind of what Inktronic does. And if you look at their system, it works with almost any device. It talks to iPhones, it'll talk with iPads, Androids, tablets, PCs, just anything, smart boards, just about anything that's electronic. It works with, but in addition to that, you can use it with pen and paper. And this is just a shot that I took showing markups that were done on a document, and it illustrates some of the markups, for example, are obviously written. Others are typed, where I entered, for example, in Bluebeam new comment by me. It just goes to show that this can be done on paper, or it can be done through some of the PDF systems that are out there and popular today, like Bluebeam. But it also expands into an untapped market that I've discovered over the past several months, and that is the number of forms that are used on a construction project that are outside the scope of what somebody's project management system may offer. And that includes things such as city required documents for fire marshal's reports, or incident reports for insurance companies, or daily reporting logs, or site visitors. You just go on and on and on with a list of forms that are currently used in construction, where they currently use hard copy paper. And managing those pieces of paper can become challenging. So why not allow that to be a digital input, where the form that you enter is automatically activated within the project management system. I'm going to show you just a really brief overview of Inktronic, because I think it gives a picture of what this is all about. So I'll hush and let you watch this for just a second. It lasts about a minute. So, recapping what this particular opportunity brings, it's a solid product. It's been proven. It's worthy as an add-on module to almost any project management system that's out there. It's not that it has to be tied to one or another. Inktronic is looking for people to work with. They're open to organizations that serve the AEC market. It does present new print service opportunities. It is a new source of revenue for people who join. It does require some technical expertise, so it's not just open to anybody. They will evaluate people who are interested in working with them. And my view is it never hurts to talk. So if you're interested and would like to know more about it, just feel free to contact me or contact Inktronic. But going back to the idea of the out-of-the-box summary, consider what your box is. Your box may be totally different than what I have gone through, even in the examples that I have given. But base that on what you are comfortable with, what's your experience, what your research shows you is something that would be of interest to your clients. Talk to them about your strategic idea. Look at what current systems are out there and talk to people that could be prospective partners, vendors, or people who help you get where you want to go. Can you become a partner to someone? What's it going to cost? Can I afford to develop it on my own? What's going to be the potential for a return on investment? And lastly, looking at staffing. And that, I know this is really one of the toughest parts of the decision. But can the existing people that are on board be retrained to use the new services that I'm thinking about offering? And what do I do with staff who simply cannot adapt? I know that's a tough question, but if you're aggressive in pursuing what's best for your organization, I think you'll find that there are ways to address even those serious concerns. And lastly, I just want to wish you the best of luck as you think about what out of the box opportunities might exist for your organization. And I want to thank the people who allowed me to use screenshots from their websites as illustrations of having strategically thought about out of the box opportunities and developed their own solutions, including Inktronic. And with that, Ed, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions that people might have.
Great. Thank you very much, Woody. Excellent presentation. So attendees, if you have any questions, please use that questions tab and send them in, and I'll direct them to Woody. Woody, we don't have any questions yet, but as we're waiting to see if some come in, I actually have a couple that I thought of while you were speaking. One is that I know that one problem that I've heard from members occasionally when they consider adding some of these advanced services to their AEC clients is that they have for so long been known as the printers and solely as printers that they are not recognized or they're not respected for their ability to deliver higher level services. And I'm wondering if you can give us a couple of tips on how a company that has been devoted to printing for its entire existence can raise its profile with its AEC clients to get itself, as they say, a seat at the table, a little bit higher up in some of these conversations, and thus be able to offer some of these other services.
Sure, and it's a very good question, and I think one of those things that I've seen some people do is to begin as I showed with Southeast Blueprint. They are having people certified by organizations external to reprographics and having a credential, whether it's CDT or whether they go and get someone who's credentialed in the IT arena or whatever the arena may be, if they recognize the credential as being one that brings credibility to the individual and the individual works for your organization, I think that's one way to get that seat at the table. And another way that some people have addressed it is by changing the focus of the entire organization so that it's no longer Blueprint or reprographics. It's a generic name that in any, and that allows people to go in with a fresh approach that at least gives the opportunity to open the door wider.
Excellent. Thank you, Woody. My other question is you described carefully how members can approach Inktronic and become resellers or partners with Inktronic. But are you aware, are some of the others that you profiled today also open to having other reprographics shops resell their product or become partners in their product?
I know that some probably would be, but I didn't ask that question of them when I asked permission to use their website, so I wouldn't want to answer for them. But I would say,
Hey, Woody, we just lost your audio. Can you repeat what you said? Woody, we seem to have lost you. Well, for other attendees, if you have any questions, please send them in. We don't see any at the moment, and we seem to have lost Woody's phone connection. So I'm glad that that lasted at least long enough for us to finish his presentation. So let me say thank you to Woody again and to all the attendees. And I hope that you found today's event useful. There are 2 other webinars planned for this year. Please stay tuned for those, and we'll give you more information as soon as we have those locked up. And this webinar is being recorded. So if you would like to listen to it later or have some of your staff listen to it, it will be available on the Member Center of the APDSP website. So thank you, everybody, and this concludes today's webinar.